wanted to talk about generational differences because, as we every month or so, we kind of look a month out to say, what do we want to talk about? I'm really bummed that Kim is not on here because I think that she would really add some value to this conversation. But I know she's been like crazy busy, which is also a beautiful thing, right? I actually teach this session called Generational Differences in the Workplace, or Leading Generational Differences. And there's a bigger firm that asked me to do this. They're like 75 lawyers in St. Louis, KC, and I think they have an office in like Oklahoma as well. And they asked me to come in like a year ago and teach this session, which I thought was really interesting because they were actually having clashes going on. And just people kind of rubbing each other the wrong way. And there was clearly something going on with age differences. You didn't sing hello. And my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old are obsessed with seeing themselves on camera. And, much to my dismay, they're almost always naked all the time whenever we're home. So Sarah just always says the second my Zoom clicks on, I automatically have two naked kids running in the background. She's clothed today, thankfully. Count our blessings. What was really fascinating to me was I did this session and, part of my goal, I think a lot of times whenever you attend generational differences sessions, is they're way too focused on trying to make you experts with understanding the differences across the generations. And we know we're not going to all be experts, right? I mean, there's just a lot to know. We can know some generalities, but at the end of the day, the real goal here is to understand each other better and just be gracious and understanding we're coming from different perspectives, right? And what was really interesting at the end of that session was really how alike everyone is. And so just kind of setting that tone, I think the goal here in this conversation is to talk through, what have you guys experienced as individuals, but also leading teams of lawyers and non-lawyers and lawyers, which a lot of non-lawyers tend to actually be older than lawyers, like meaning paralegals with a lot of experience working with associates that are younger than them, or you being the lawyer that's working with a paralegal that's older than you. And so let's start there. What have your experiences been with either yourself or with leading others that are across generations, both for the positive and the negative?
I know for myself, when I started in the legal industry, which was actually at my dad's law firm over the summers, I actually had to reverse learn technology is how I explain it. Because law firms I say that they've kept, doctors and lawyers have kept the fax industry alive, but I had to, it was a bit of working both ways. I had to learn how to use a manual bait stamp machine. They referred to the copier as Xerox. I didn't know what that was. There was an actual tape recorder. Like my dad would tape record himself saying something because he doesn't know how to type. He never learned how to type. And it was like Mad Men style, listening to a cassette tape with a pedal pusher and headphones. So it was interesting, but at the same time, I was able to teach them like, hey, now with PDFs, you don't have to manually bait stamp every individual page. It'll just do 300 pages in 1 minute. Mm-hmm. But it was hard on both ends being able to use technologies that both people felt comfortable with. Mm. It was a little easier for me, I feel like, to learn new technologies than it was for my dad or his, legal assistant that he's had for 20 years. But I know that was the technology gap is a big one with generational differences.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, certainly, I mean, it touches a lot of different areas. Certainly for years, it has affected both recruiting and retention, in terms of what, people in law school or younger attorneys are looking for, and then what it takes to keep them. And, all sorts of different, things that, older generations would consider work ethic. We used to talk about it in terms of work ethic, which as we go further along, it may not necessarily be work ethic. It's just, it's one of the generational, perspectives. And of course, we've lost one really good attorney. We've lost a number of them over the years, but one, we've always invested pretty heavily in training and mentoring, and one of them we lost because of that, because the older generations here, and this is probably, I don't know, 5-8 years ago, wouldn't adapt. It was very much, they've got to change. Jamie, I think I heard you talk about this once, and I think your point was basically, you're not going to change them. It's the you that have to change. And I don't think a lot of firms, mine included, the older generations here, they're just not, they don't see it that way, and they can't, and they won't. So certainly there, certainly the technology that Sarah was talking about, we've seen that. We've always been, fortunately here, always had the technology and embraced the technology, but you then run into, other firms that don't have that technology, and you talk about reverse learning, and you have to, address to that. It was great when we got rid of our fax machine, because it was taking up a lot of space, and it was something else to, buy supplies for. But fortunately we have an imager that, that will let us do that, because we still get people who want to fax us stuff, or want us to fax stuff to them. And fortunately, you can, and technology caught up to it. So certainly you have that on kind of the HR side. But the other aspect of the HR side is it's very evident now with COVID and everything going on, both in terms of the generational differences, and not only generational differences, but you'd ask about generational differences. So part of it's generational, in how people view, COVID and the pandemic, and how people view the mental health effects of that. And, there is, even before this, there was a generationally saw it in other firms, and in my firm, there is just a bias and misunderstanding. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there was a real disconnect on the mental health. And one of our old line firms here had 2 or 3 of their younger partners. I think one of them has totally lost his license now. The other one's been disciplined, but we're billing one of their large hospital clients, and they went to try a case in another county, and it was a party, and it got billed to the client. And and that was a long after years probably, of certainly, and it was, it was co-occurring, mental health and substance use issues. And, to hear the rest of them talk about that over there, some of them totally didn't understand it. And the rest of them were really struggling with it. And I've seen it here. Even one of our older partners here, we have the mandatory, finally went to mandatory CLE a number of years ago. And then they decided, part of your professionalism has to be mental health and diversity. But he told me about a year ago, he had to go to a program on, mental health issues. And he literally said to me, knowing that I have an interest in some of that, people just need to suck it up. I mean, that was literally, and the thing is, with this particular one, it was well-intentioned. I mean, that's just his perspective. He's part-time now, don't try, but that's his perspective on it. And, there are others, of course. So in any event, I've talked enough, but those are some of the generational things certainly that I've, noticed and struggled with.
Yeah, you were referencing my famous saying, "They're not going to change, so we have to."
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's I think to not be open to change is the kiss of death of your organization. It's just a matter of how long you can survive.
Jamie,
Right.
and I, of course, have shared that a number of times here at my own firm, and just gotten this look like, what?
Well, and how painful that survival is too, right? Like,
Exactly. So, I am, anyway, I am surviving and experiencing some of that. And anyway, yes. So,
no, that's good. Thank you for hopping in. Mike, did you want to share?
sure.
We kind of talked about training and feedback and development, and that's sort of one of the stereotypes of millennials, which I think is interesting because growing up, I was always labeled Gen X, and now I'm apparently a millennial. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know where feedback and development became a bad word or like a slur against millennials. That seems weird to me, because the argument goes like, well, what if we train them and we leave, right? And I forget who said it, but the flip side of that is, what if we don't train them and they stay?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, well,
Yep.
you want your organization to grow, so investing in things like mentorship and development, and that just seems like a no-brainer to me, but maybe that's just because I'm a millennial.
Yeah, I have to agree with Mike on that. I actually, almost at every workplace I've been at, a lot of it's because I've worked for a lot of startups and nonprofits, but I've had to request continually employee reviews, employee check-ins, or like performance measures. And maybe that's because, I went to business school more recently, and that's something that's really hammered in, is having those checkpoints and feedback loops, not only internally, but with your clients. But I think the firms that I've worked for in the past, they've really focused more so on the feedback that we get from clients rather than the internal training and feedback we get internally. But I don't know. I've never felt that that's been I feel like I've read a lot of articles about it being negative, but I feel like whenever I approach leadership about it, it's something that they want to do, but it's one of those things that's just not prioritized all the time.
They don't see it as having any return. I think many of them.
I see where Mike is saying, I always thought I was like a Gen Xer, and those, like, you and I, Mike, are probably what they call cusp babies, right? Like, we were kind of born at the beginning of one generation and the tail end of another. So we're going to relate. Actually, they've even segmented off this segment of millennials that's like a 6-7 year period that are called Zennials with an X. There's like this whole other kind of subset that we're defined in a bit of a different way. And I think, so many generations are defined by the things they didn't like about the generation before them, right? And like, I think about what I despise about performance reviews is because they became a very annual check the box experience where I'm giving you feedback because I have to, because it's part of a process.
Meets expectations.
Exactly. And all the feedback you get in January is how you performed in December and November, because that's the most relevant to what I remember, instead of it being ongoing feedback throughout the year. And it's the same. Don't we parent the same way, right? Like, I'm never going to do it the way that my parents did it. And like, then it shapes like another, generation after that. And it's just interesting to me, the session that I did with this big firm, and then I ultimately ended up being asked to present the same topic to the Kansas City Women's Chamber, which was like 80 people on this call. It's just interesting. Got lots of feedback after that. My real goal was to show that while we're different, we see the exact same situation from like opposite perspectives, but we have a hard time appreciating why we might have those opposite perspectives, and so like coming into, something like reviews is just an example, but also, millennials are lazy. They don't want to work. They want to leave at 3:00 every day, right? This is what the older generation is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the millennials saying, but I work so much faster than you. I get done in 6 hours what takes you 10. Why should I have to sit here for 4 hours and do nothing, right? And that perspective difference on the same thing, right? It's, they're leaving the office early, not burning the midnight oil. It's like, well, really? Am I? And if you were maybe more efficient, maybe you could leave at 3:00 too if you wanted. But my typical approach in these like learning sessions is just how can we have an open discussion in which we're not becoming experts on each generation, but we're learning to approach each other with like empathy and grace and like realizing that we're different, and that difference is coming from and defined by our life experiences, right? And we don't know what those life experiences are. Sorry, I'm navigating trying to keep a 3-year-old entertained and also hit home my point. And so anyways, it was just neat to me to like watch. I mean, I know like my age, like also being a younger person in this industry, and not just a younger person, but viewed as younger than I am. You know, people are always shocked because I have a young face that I have 4 kids. And I mean, I've had 4 kids for 3 years. And so when I go into conversations with decision makers, when I go into conversations with decision makers, especially I think even in this industry where lawyers tend to have a higher opinion of themselves than a lot of other maybe industries and professionals, you know, they go in expecting a certain, yeah, baby, I'm getting you Minnie. She wants Minnie Mouse. I'm trying to help her get. So they see my face and there's like an assumption that I don't have experience, right? Or I don't have, surely there's no way you can have the experience. You just look too young.
I don't want it.
You don't want that one? But it's Minnie Mouse.
No.
It's not? Guys, our lives are falling apart over here because we have a generational difference of what is Minnie Mouse and what isn't Minnie Mouse. Clearly, Minnie Mouse on Disney Plus is not the Minnie Mouse on YouTube Kids.
That's hilarious.
How can we work through this generational difference right
Eden, go get your Minnie Mouse headband for me.
Oh, you want to go get your headband and show them your Minnie Mouse headband? You want to go get it? Go get it real quick. No, she's not going to go. That's okay.
Okay, I tried.
I know. That's all right. It is what it is. We're working through it, right? Like, this is the world that we're living in. It's trying to be flexible. So anyway, all that to say, I was like, that's been a lot of my experience. I feel like for me personally has just been young in general, but also I had a crazy career trajectory. So I did have the experience and do have the experience that a lot of firms are looking for, but there's sometimes this initial questioning of, do I really, because I look younger than I am. So they're just hurdles to overcome. And I think the opposite is true too. You know, I've had my own bias just being transparent whenever I'm speaking with an older person and wanting to make sure they can like keep up with, you know, the technology and the speed at which we work, and you know, sort of trying to keep an open mind about the value that different generations do add to the workforce, even if it's different value. So anyway, that's just been a little bit of my experience. Did anyone else want to jump in and share?
It's, you know, I just find it's interesting that the cusp thing, because I'm the same way. I'm kind of on the cusp too, and that's kind of interesting. The other thing I would offer too, generationally, is that I've noticed for years, because I like coffee, is that older generations appear to be more tolerant of bad coffee and bad beer.
Interesting.
That's actually so true. That is so true, Randy. At my firm, at my previous firm in Portland, we would not drink the coffee if certain people made it. And we always made sure people, like, we know who made it. And we instituted a thing where like I had this perfect little scoop. I had it right in front of the coffee. And I said, 2 of these perfectly full of this brim, that will make, like, we tried to like instruct people on how to do it. But that is, I didn't see that as a generational thing before. I thought of it as more individual, but now that I look back on it, that is very true.
Well, and you know what, now that you mention it too, like I recall hearing people from an older generation than me saying, you know, there was a time when coffee was coffee, right? Like no one really cared about craft coffee.
It was crap.
Right. Yeah. Like, or same thing with like craft beer. It's like a generation that enjoys those things like are looked down upon a little bit, you know. That's very interesting. I'm like had never really thought about it.
Yeah, it used
things
to be,
that are really important that we're getting out of this call today is older
That's
people
right.
just don't have an appreciation for coffee and beer quality.
That's right.
Well, there's something too, though, I think we are in a unique position now. I mean, where so, many of us on this call are, millennials, whether we're younger millennials or older millennials. And we have an opportunity now to look at the generations behind, coming now behind us in a more, I think, understanding way, right? Like the things that have been frustrating about how we've been criticized and looked down upon and like dismissed, to be frank. I mean, I think a lot of people in society dismiss, oh, they're just a millennial. I think we have an opportunity to not do that to the generation that's now coming behind, the two generations that are coming behind us in the workplace. And that's hard. I mean, it is hard. I mean, there's a lot of things happening in our society, I think, that could be tempting for us to take on that air of pretension and, oh, well, we're better than them and we just don't understand that. And I think that's where our opportunity lies, right? Is to be that, like, bridge that gap, be the gap bridgers between
One,
generations.
I completely agree, Jamie, because you always see the, BuzzFeed or clickbaity articles on Facebook, like why boomers hate millennials or millennials are ruining this industry. But I've seen a couple where it's like, are you millennial or what's the new generation? Or the Gen Z? Gen Z is the one below us. And, but there's some that are showing like, oh, millennials like applauding like Gen Z doing X, Y, Z or whatever and trying to be more appreciative of the next generation. The other thought I had is I've been writing our backlog of LFLCC blogs and was re-listening to our ones on billing and AR. And there, Jamie made a big push. You need to be completely digital, like only so many of your clients, even if you are in elder care, truly want them in the mail. Well, I went to go see if there was like any studies on it and attached resources. Over 50% of people that get bills still prefer paper bills, just generally and not industry based. But just thinking about that, like how can we use our generational differences? Like if you're a newer law firm, you still need to think about catering to clients who may not function your way. So even though you do have all the new technologies available, we still need to have caveats so that we can be reaching different generations with our work. We still need to have old school systems in place. I know you can keep all your evidence and all your, court filings and stuff. You can keep it all digital, but there are still some clients that are going to prefer to have that paper and prefer to have, a paper trail of things. So just another thing I was thinking about.
It's so interesting. I'm just like, I like being transparent with my own imperfections with people in general, but with you guys. As you're saying that, Sarah, I'm thinking, hell no. There are plenty of other lawyers that are willing to do paper. If you guys want to grow in your firm, you stay digital. I'm just like being transparent in like my own, like, you're right, that we probably should be more understanding. But I'm like, no.
I know, I get it, Jamie, but even like, and it's a difference between if it's a recurring bill or one-time bill that people have found. If it's a recurring bill, people are very fine with digital, even the older generations. But if it's a project-based cost or something that they're not expecting at certain times, that's when people want the hard copies, like medical expenses or large lawyer fees, it appears.
Interesting. Well, this has been awesome. I really always just appreciate the discussion. And I think, I hear from people, there are people that go and watch these videos after the fact that can't attend. And we consistently get great feedback about people just hearing like how other firms are doing things differently, or, just idea sharing, I think always adds value. So I really appreciate, your time. Does anyone have anything to like wrap us up with? A joke, a limerick, a motivational something? Anything good?
It's not a joke or a limerick, but to go back to the sort of praising future generations, I coach high school rugby. I didn't this past season, but we'll see if it's back in the spring. And all those kids were born after 9/11, and so they're definitely younger generation. And I'm not worried about where we're going. The way they're developing and the things they think about, things like mental health, they're okay discussing it with each other. And I'm really not worried about where we're going.
Yeah, well, that's good.
That is good. That's good to hear. And I have noticed that. So I have, participated in our high school mock trial judging here basically my whole career. And I do a lot of other volunteering, but that's one of the things I've stayed with because of exactly what you said, Mike, which is it kind of reaffirms, yeah, we're going to be okay. And the other thing then about, let's see, 4 or 5 years ago, I picked up some graduate advising of a fraternity where at Knox College, where I did my undergraduate, and it does the same thing. And it can be something that's time consuming because it's a solid 2 hours away. Of course, now we're doing everything remotely, but it's the same thing. It's like, okay, there are people that are bright and compassionate, and it does kind of reaffirm. So I agree with that.
I can't share a lot of my stuff because they're all videos or whatever, but I feel like TikTok emerging during the pandemic has been a generational connector, I guess I should say. Like, even though it's something that's viewed as like very Gen Z, and millennials kind of make fun of themselves for being on there, but there are even some like grandparents on TikToks, and some of the most inspiring TikToks I've seen have been like people's parent, like, so probably boomers on TikTok and stuff like that. But I don't know. I've seen it as, I think, had it not been at its like peak during the pandemic, I think the pandemic has allowed a lot of different generations to connect via technology. And so I've really enjoyed that. Like Fleetwood Mac and Ocean Spray have all now gotten on TikTok. I don't know if you guys have seen the viral TikTok of the guy skateboarding to work while drinking cranberry juice. That's my favorite. I've made everyone at work watch that meme, and then I showed them, Dr. Phil doing it, the drummer for Fleetwood Mac, even Stevie Nicks just got on TikTok just to make a TikTok about that whole viral sensation. Dreams by Fleetwood Mac was the number one on the Billboard 100 for the last 2 weeks because of this sensation. And a lot of Gen Zers are saying, "Oh, is this a new song?" and not having known that was a great hit, years ago. So I do see technology now, especially as more people are being forced to use it through the pandemic, as a great connector for all of us. So that, to me, that little, if you haven't seen that TikTok, I'm going to post it on the LinkedIn group, and maybe I'll post it on our Facebook page. Maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know, Jamie, are you okay with me posting that on maybe I'll post it on our social media today and say,
I love
we
it
talked
as a
about generational differences.
Bringing the generations together through,
Yeah, because I think that really did. I mean, it's a song from, 70s or 80s?
70s.
That is 70s. See, it's a song from the 70s that is now on the 100 chart 50 years later. Even the CEO of Ocean Spray got an account, and they have a whole campaign, an ad campaign around this skateboarding or roller skating while drinking Ocean Spray. So it's, to me, I find it inspiring. And I think one silver lining of the pandemic is we're all kind of on the same page, or we're all getting there technology wise. It's forced a lot of people to get there with us. So.
I think that's a really, really cool point. That's awesome.
I want to chime in too. I agree with you, Sarah. I think this is a great time for all industries to almost go back to grassroots marketing and strategies, even though we have the power of digital marketing. And I think TikTok is a prime example of almost a concept that takes you back to almost grassroots marketing strategies, almost word of mouth, but using that power of the internet that really bridges the gap between the generations. So as you guys are talking, I was thinking of this book that I read called Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if y'all have ever read that, but I think that book really changed the way I think about things and just helped me to embrace change more. And so in every industry, I think it's just important for us to always anticipate change and monitor change, and just always be ready to adapt quickly to those changes and use mediums like TikTok, and not exclude yourself from thinking well, I'm an attorney, so my industry doesn't fall into the line of something creative like a TikTok, but it actually could, and so be okay being creative,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to those points, so there's the challenge related to this one. So you're seeing a whole lot more people do it. And one of the interesting things that I saw is he's at the Minnesota Vikings. He's there, some sort of public relations and development type thing, but he's from Minnesota. And so he did one over the weekend. He's wake surfing. He, of course, grew up on a lake and started water skiing when he was little, and then was wakeboarding for a while. And then some time ago, apparently, he started wake surfing. And part of the interesting thing about it is, one, it's something I recognize, but he did it in one take, apparently.
Oh, wow.
It was really, but it's, it's that whole multi-generational, it's reaching out, it's, reinventing, and, kind of something you normally wouldn't see from somebody like that. You wouldn't expect to going into this. So.
No, that's really cool. Well, we'll wrap up for today. I don't know if I'm connected with you, Mike, I think on social media, I don't really know, but I thought I would share this little funny picture. I just got back from Atlanta visiting one of our clients there. And we took this picture, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, that bee was hovering literally right by your head." And I posted it on my story and said I was pincing it up.
I love it.
Pulling
a pence.
I'm pulling a pence. In light of our highly charged political environment, I think this is something we can get behind laughing about, regardless of how we feel or what party we connect with. This is just humanity, right? Like things. I thought that was pretty funny, so I thought I would share that with you guys. Awesome. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day and your week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Sorry.